Welcome to another episode of China Update, where I provide you guys with the most up-to-date political, economic and geostrategic analysis on the world's number 2 economy. My name is Tony. Let's jump in.
Okay, happy Wednesday everybody. My apologies in advance. I have a mild irritation in my throat, so my voice may sound a little different than usual. Hopefully it is not too distracting. Let's begin with salient developments related to the Chinese economy. On Tuesday, China's central bank once again cut rates in the hopes of stimulating the economy. The one-year loan prime rate offered by banks was lowered to 3.55% from a previous rate of 3.65%, while the 5-year rate, which is typically used to price mortgages, was cut to 4.2% from 4.3%. As we discussed last week, however, analysts largely agree that these monetary moves can do little to revive the renewed slowdown in the Chinese economy, and that larger fiscal moves are needed to achieve Beijing's growth targets this year. China's sluggish economy is not a result of high interest rates, but rather constrained infrastructure and real estate investment. We remember that infrastructure and real estate account for about half of China's total investment. Serena Zhou, senior China economist at Mizuho Securities in Hong Kong, observed on the move, quote, "Rate cuts alone may not be enough," end quote. Marcella Chow, a global market strategist at JP Morgan Asset Management in Hong Kong, expressed, quote, "The most important thing right now is to boost confidence. So a better macro outlook and stronger property prices are key," end quote. However, a nervous Beijing still appears unwilling to turn back on the credit taps, with massive fiscal stimulus. Two concerns with the already acute local fiscal and debt crises, which we have explored in depth in previous videos. As regular viewers know, analysts are thus deeply divided regarding just how much extra juice Beijing will pump into the economy this year. Quote, "Stimulus is likely to be measured. We see the People's Bank of China's policy rate cut this week as a clear signal of policy easing intended to prevent the negative sentiment from fanning itself. Targeted support to the housing sector, an increase in policy bank lending, and possibly additional local special bond issuance quota could be coming," end quote. Investors had been hoping for the State Council, China's cabinet, to possibly announce new support measures for the economy after a meeting last Friday. Indeed, we remember that Bloomberg had predicted a stimulus package to be announced. The State Council, however, disappointed, stopping short of releasing any specific proposals, and simply saying that it was, quote, "studying new measures that will be adopted in a timely manner," end quote, without giving further details. Quote, "The threshold for stimulus is higher, and when there is intervention, easing is drip-fed rather than flooding into the economy. Xi has stuck to his push for high-quality growth and is unlikely to change stance now, especially with regard to property," end quote. Meanwhile, Beijing policymakers continue to bang the demand and consumption drum. On Tuesday too, Politburo Standing Committee member and top political advisor Wang Huning, at a special meeting, stressed the importance of research into the recovery and expansion of consumption, according to state-run Xinhua. The same day, the state-run 21st Century Business Herald published an interview with the president of Shanghai University of Finance and Economics, discussing why it is critically important to increase people's income levels in order to lift demand. President Liu called for more proactive fiscal and monetary support measures, adding, quote, "Deflation is much more scary than inflation," end quote. Some commentators are concerned, however, that Beijing still hasn't figured out exactly how it is to lift this demand sustainably. Quote, "There seems to be a fairly contentious debate among policymakers about whether China should return to the old supply-side playbook to keep growth from continuing to fall, or to turn to a new demand-side playbook. I think the confusion exists because while everyone now acknowledges that households should receive a larger share of income, no one has really thought through the short-term implications of reversing 2 to 3 decades of flows from households to manufacturers. This isn't like deciding whether to subsidize one industrial sector more at the expense of another industrial sector. This means undermining the whole process of supply-side subsidies. I think this is the next big conceptual step analysts must take," end quote. Next up, US-based Wall Street Journal has published another exclusive report on PRC efforts to expand its military and spying presence in Cuba. This is just one publication, once again citing unnamed sources. Two other US outlets have backed up the claims, however, these are also based on unnamed sources within the US government. For our purposes then, we will just take note of the article's main points. The Wall Street Journal article writes, and we're now quoting the article directly, "Discussions for the facility on Cuba's northern coast are at an advanced stage but not concluded, U.S. intelligence reports suggest. The Biden administration has contacted Cuban officials to try to forestall the deal, seeking to tap into what it thinks might be Cuban concerns about ceding sovereignty. Current and former U.S. officials said a new military facility could provide China with a platform to potentially house troops permanently on the island, and broaden its intelligence gathering, including electronic eavesdropping, against the US. China and Cuba already jointly run 4 eavesdropping stations on the island, according to US officials. The network underwent a significant upgrade around 2019, when a single station expanded to a network of 4 sites that are operated jointly, and Chinese involvement deepened." It is here that we end our direct quoting of the article. Yesterday, Tuesday, in response to a question about this story, a People's Republic of China Foreign Ministry spokesperson responded, quote, "I'm not aware of what you mentioned." End quote. Next up, we turn to Europe. Hey guys, if you enjoyed today's episode of China Update, don't forget to hit that like button. It's just me making these episodes every day. It's a lot of work, but your guys' support is a huge source of motivation. Subscribing and sharing is a huge help as well, and for those who can go the extra mile and help me keep the channel financially sustainable, Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee links are in the description below. Thank you so much, everybody, for the ongoing support. Finally, for today's video, as regular viewers know, China's Premier Qiang is visiting Europe this week, his first overseas trip in this new role. He has been in Germany for the 7th China-Germany Intergovernmental Consultation, as well as an official visit to the country, and will also pay an official visit to France and attend the summit for a new global financing pact later this week. Last Saturday, we did a deep dive into the political environment as it relates to China-EU relations Li is operating in during this trip. For today, let's examine the German visit. On Monday, Premier Li met with Germany's president at the presidential palace, with the latter asking Li to convey his sincere regards to Xi Jinping and saying that, quote, "Germany is willing to be a trusted partner of China to jointly safeguard trade liberalization and meet challenges such as climate change." End quote. Later that day, Li gave a seminar with the German business community, which included representatives from Siemens and auto giants Mercedes-Benz and BMW. Li told the audience of business executives that, quote, "Risk prevention and cooperation are not opposites, and non-cooperation is the biggest risk," end quote, and that the question of risk prevention should be returned to enterprises from the government. On this particular point, one China analyst rhetorically asked, quote, "Did any of the CEOs present ask if the PRC has returned the leadership of risk prevention to its enterprises?" End quote. Li then proceeded to give the German business community a quick lesson, or perhaps revision is a more fitting word, in Marxist analysis, expressing, quote, "Economic globalization has intertwined the world economy, and we should view the issue of dependence dialectically, not artificially exaggerating dependence, or even equating mutual dependence with insecurity." End quote. The same day, German Chancellor Scholz, at the event hosted by the BDI Industry Association in Beijing, expressed his opposition to the German government placing all exports to China under supervision, telling the audience, quote, "We have now made a whole series of laws with which we can guarantee the security of our economy," end quote. Despite all these happy words, the underlying political awkwardness was not lost to those in the German public watching these interactions. Domestic media was quick to point out that during the so-called press conference with Li and Scholz, journalists were barred from asking questions. In a sadly ironic move at this very press event, Scholz even urged Beijing to show, quote, "freedom and openness for journalists working in China," end quote. Though they couldn't ask questions, the journalists nonetheless wrote articles. One domestic outlet observed, for example, quote, "China's treatment of Uyghurs is unlikely to be central to the discussions this week," end quote. And US publication Politico, which operates in Germany, in a piece yesterday wrote that, quote, "Volkswagen's relationship with China and the human rights abuses carried out there is illustrative of Berlin's increasingly uncomfortable dependency on Beijing, and the challenges Germany is likely to face as the West seeks to turn de-risking from a slogan into action," end quote. As we discussed on Saturday, however, it may be French protectionism more than US hawkishness that ends up most threatening German business ambitions in China. Despite all this, however, corporate Germany still appears to be very keen on investing heavily into the country. In an interview with state-run Xinhua, the president and CEO of Siemens AG told the outlet that his company, quote, "highly values the opportunities offered by the development of the Chinese market," end quote, adding that, quote, "Siemens will continue to expand its manufacturing capacities in China, strive to provide better products and services to more Chinese partners, improve research and development (R&D) efforts, and actively participate in the high-quality development of China's economy," end quote, according to the state-run publication. Monday evening, at a special dinner hosting the PRC delegation, Scholz told Li, quote, "The G7 has no interest in impeding China's economic rise, but at the same time we are watching closely to avoid dangerous economic dependencies," end quote. Also on Monday, People's Republic of China Foreign Minister Qiang held a phone call with his German counterpart. The themes of the talk, based on the official readouts, are very familiar to us, and there's no need to go into the details. Beijing is trying to play down the political issues to focus on the economic side of the relationship, as it knows that it cannot be cut off from the US market and the EU market at the same time, and it understands that Germany, or more specifically German businesses, will be key to these efforts. Qiang made statements like, "China and Germany are important partners and the relationship between the two countries is very close," and "China's development is an opportunity rather than a challenge for Germany," and "China and Germany need cooperation, not confrontation," etc., etc. But despite this push for economic cooperation, the political and security concerns do continue to rear their ugly heads, much to the frustration of the Chinese side. On Tuesday, the two sides held the 7th China-Germany intergovernmental consultation talks, and awkwardly on the same day, the German government published its latest domestic intelligence report, which included China on a list of countries, quote, "with massive spying activities," end quote, in Germany. The German intelligence community, which is obviously much more hawkish than the business community, likely timed its publication of the report to coincide with Li's visit and counterbalance the advocacy of the business community. The report expressed, quote, "For many years, China has been operating a comprehensive system of technology and know-how transfer to advance its civilian and military development," end quote. Okay, that is today's episode of China Update. Once again, my apologies for my voice. I hope it wasn't too distracting. I hope you all have a lovely Wednesday. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.